Some voices give us songs. And then there are the rare voices that sing their way into the story of our own lives. They're the soundtrack for the first dance at a wedding, for the long drive on a summer night, for the quiet moment of reflection when we need to be reminded of what hope feels like. Sam Cooke's voice was never just music, it was a feeling. It was the sound of sincerity, of grace, of a world that felt gentler and more loving. It was, in the truest sense of the word, the voice of an angel, which makes the end of the story so jarring, so profoundly disturbing that even decades later it feels impossible to reconcile. Because the man with the voice of an angel did not die a peaceful death. He died violently, sordidly, on the cold, cheap floor of a motel office in South Central Los Angeles. He was shot in the heart, clad only in a sports jacket and a single shoe. His death officially ruled a justifiable homicide in the middle of a tawdry, confused, and deeply unsatisfying scandal. How does this happen? How does the man who sang "You Send Me" and "A Wonderful World" end up in a place called the Hacienda Motel? His life ending in a flurry of gunfire and disputed testimony? This is more than the story of a great singer. It's the story of a revolutionary who fought for his own soul, for his own art, and for his own freedom in a world that wasn't ready for him. It is the story of a man who built an empire only to die a lonely, brutal death. And at its heart lies a dark, unsettling mystery, a mystery that to this day refuses to be silenced. To understand the journey of Sam Cooke, one must first understand the world that forged him. He was born Samuel Cooke in 1931 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, the very heart of the Mississippi Delta, the cradle of the blues. But his family's world was not the juke joint. It was the church. His father, the Reverend Charles Cooke, was a Baptist minister, a man of God who led his family north in the Great Migration, seeking refuge from the suffocating oppression of Jim Crow. They settled on the south side of Chicago, a burgeoning hub of black culture, industry, and community. The Chicago of the 1930s and 40s was a city of stark contrasts. For black families like the Cookes, it offered opportunities unimaginable in the Deep South, but it was far from a promised land. De facto segregation was a daily reality, creating a city within a city. The world outside their neighborhood was often hostile and unwelcoming. But inside there was a vibrant, self-reliant community, and its soul was the church. The church was more than a place of worship. It was the community's social center, its political forum, its cultural incubator, and its safest sanctuary. It was where you found solace, where you found strength, and where you found your voice. For young Sam, the son of a preacher, the church was his first school and his first stage. He and his siblings formed a singing group, the Singing Children, performing in their father's congregation. From the very beginning, his talent was undeniable. It wasn't just that he could sing, it was how he sang. There was a purity, a clarity, and an emotional honesty in his voice that was startling, even in a child. He didn't just mimic the hymns, he inhabited them. This was the sacred soil in which the voice that would captivate the world was first nurtured. But outside the church walls, another musical form was taking shape: gospel. This wasn't the restrained hymnody of a Sunday service. This was the electrifying, soul-shaking music of the gospel quartets that traveled the Chitlin Circuit, a network of theaters, auditoriums, and churches that were safe for black performers in a segregated America. Groups like the Golden Gate Quartet and the Pilgrim Travelers were superstars in this world. Their performances legendary for their vocal prowess and raw, ecstatic energy. For a young, ambitious singer like Sam Cooke, this was the major leagues. It was a world of profound artistry and deep community, a universe unto itself, with its own stars, its own rules, and its own unshakable faith. It was in this world that Sam Cooke would first become a king, long before the mainstream white audience had any idea who he was. In 1950, a seismic event occurred in the world of gospel music. R.H. Harris, the legendary lead singer of the Soul Stirrers, one of the most innovative and revered quartets of all time, announced his retirement. The group needed a new lead, someone who could fill the shoes of a giant. They took a chance on a handsome, charismatic 19-year-old with a voice that felt like a direct line to heaven, Sam Cooke. Joining the Soul Stirrers was like a young musician being asked to join the Beatles. Sam was stepping into a hallowed institution. Initially, the group's devoted followers were skeptical of this smooth-faced newcomer. But then he opened his mouth. His first lead vocal on the song, "Jesus Gave Me Water," was a revelation. His voice was different from the gritty, hard-shouting style of many of his contemporaries. It was effortless, fluid, and imbued with a kind of sweet, yearning quality that was utterly mesmerizing. He introduced a new kind of sound, a vocal sob or cry that conveyed deep emotion without sacrificing melodic beauty. He was a sensation. For the next 6 years, Sam Cooke was the undisputed prince of gospel. He led the Soul Stirrers to unprecedented heights of popularity, writing and singing lead on a string of classic hits like "Touch the Hem of His Garment" and "Nearer to Thee." He was adored, almost worshipped by the gospel audience. He was handsome, immaculately dressed, and possessed a stage presence that was both spiritually uplifting and, to the great consternation of many church elders, subtly sensual. Women in the audience would swoon during his performances, caught in the rapture of his voice. He was living the life of a star, but it was a life lived within the strict confines of the gospel world. The pay was meager, the travel was grueling, and the audience, while devoted, was limited. Sam was ambitious. He saw the burgeoning world of secular music, rhythm and blues, and the new explosive phenomenon of rock and roll, and he saw an opportunity. He saw artists like Ray Charles, another prodigy with deep gospel roots, successfully crossing over and achieving a level of fame and financial success that was unthinkable on the gospel circuit. The desire to cross over created a profound spiritual and professional crisis for Sam. To the devout gospel community, secular music was the devil's music. To leave the world of gospel for pop was not just a career change, it was seen as a betrayal, a turning of one's back on God for worldly gain. The pressure on him was immense. He was the golden boy, the anointed one. To leave would be to break the hearts of the very people who had made him a star. He tested the waters under a pseudonym, Dale Cook, releasing a pop song called "Lovable" in 1956. But his voice was too distinctive. Everyone knew it was him. The backlash from the gospel world was swift and harsh. He was accused of selling his soul. Torn between two worlds, he made the most momentous decision of his life. In 1957, Sam Cooke officially left the Soul Stirrers to pursue a career in pop music. The gospel prince was abdicating his throne, setting his sights on a much larger and far more dangerous kingdom. The move would bring him fame beyond his wildest dreams, but it would also set him on a path that would lead, 7 years later, to the Hacienda Motel. The transition from gospel icon to pop hopeful was not seamless. Sam was signed to Keane Records by the producer Bumps Blackwell, a man who saw his immense potential, but initially struggled to find the right sound for him. Early sessions were frustrating, with producers trying to mold him into a sound-alike of established stars like Little Richard or Fats Domino. But Sam's talent was too unique to be confined by imitation. The breakthrough came during a session in 1957. At the end of a long day with a few minutes of studio time left, they recorded a song Sam had written himself. It was a simple, sweet ballad with an infectious, lilting melody. The song was You Send Me. When the record was released, it was a cultural explosion. The song shot to number one on both the R&B and the pop charts, a rare feat for any artist, let alone a black artist in the 1950s. It sold nearly 2 million copies. Sam Cooke was no longer the Prince of Gospel. He was a pop superstar. You Send Me was the perfect crossover vehicle. It retained the emotional sincerity of his gospel singing, but packaged it in a secular, romantic context that was irresistible to the burgeoning teenage audience. His voice, so full of grace and longing, became the soundtrack for a generation's first slow dance, their first crush. He followed it with an incredible string of hits that showcased his remarkable versatility, the playful calypso of Everybody Loves to Cha-Cha-Cha, the heartbreaking balladry of Bring It On Home to Me, the socially conscious party anthem Havin' a Party, and the timeless, optimistic sing-along Another Saturday Night. His success was built on more than just his voice. He was a captivating performer. On stage, he was the epitome of cool elegance. He moved with a fluid grace, his smile able to light up the darkest auditorium. He had a unique ability to connect with his audience, to make every person in the room feel like he was singing directly to them. He was a sensation on television, appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show and American Bandstand. His clean-cut image and undeniable charm, making him one of the first black artists to be fully embraced by mainstream white America. But beneath the polished, non-threatening exterior that he presented to the mainstream, a different Sam Cooke was emerging. He was not just a talented singer. He was a brilliant and fiercely independent businessman. This is one of the most crucial and often overlooked aspects of his story. In the music industry of the 1950s and 60s, black artists were routinely exploited. They were often forced to sign predatory contracts, surrendering the publishing rights to their own songs for a pittance. They made the music, but white record executives, publishers, and managers reaped the vast majority of the financial rewards. Sam Cooke saw this injustice firsthand and refused to be its victim. He was one of the very first artists, black or white, to demand and achieve ownership of his own master recordings. This was a revolutionary act. It meant he controlled his own art. He took it a step further. In 1961, he founded his own record label, SAR Records, and his own publishing company, Cags Music. His goal was to create a haven for other artists, a place where they would be treated fairly and retain control over their work. He signed artists like Bobby Womack and the Valentinos and Johnny Taylor, nurturing their careers and ensuring they received an equitable share of the profits. In doing this, Sam Cooke was not just being a savvy businessman, he was engaging in an act of radical black empowerment. In an era before the term Black Power was even coined, he was building an independent economic base, challenging the paternalistic, exploitative structure of the music industry. He was quietly waging his own civil rights battle, not with marches and protests, but with contracts and copyrights. This independence, this refusal to stay in his place, made him a powerful and respected figure within the black community. It also, according to many, made him a dangerous man in the eyes of the established powers, both in the music industry and beyond. As Sam Cooke's fame and business empire grew, so did his social and political consciousness. The polished, charming pop star who sang sweet love songs was also a black man living in a deeply segregated and racist America. While he was celebrated on stage in New York, he could be denied a room at a motel in the South. This jarring contradiction became a source of growing anger and activism. A pivotal life-altering incident occurred on October 8, 1963, in Shreveport, Louisiana. Sam, his wife Barbara, his brother, and members of his band arrived at a Holiday Inn where they had made reservations in advance. Upon seeing that they were black, the front desk clerk nervously told them there were no vacancies. Sam, who had been dealing with these no vacancy lies his entire career, refused to back down. He politely but firmly insisted on his room, causing a scene in the lobby. The clerk called the police. Sam and his group were arrested for disturbing the peace. The Shreveport incident was a profound humiliation, but it was also a catalyst. It crystallized for him the fact that no amount of fame, money, or charm could insulate him from the poison of racism. The arrest radicalized him. It was after this event that he began to more openly align himself with the figures of the civil rights movement. He cultivated a close friendship with Malcolm X, finding common ground in their shared belief in black self-reliance and economic independence. He also became part of an extraordinary circle of friends that included the soon-to-be heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali and the legendary football star and activist Jim Brown. They were four of the most famous, powerful, and unapologetically black men in America, and their private conversations, as depicted in the play and film One Night in Miami, revolved around their responsibility as cultural figures to advance the cause of their people. Sam began to channel his growing political awareness into his music. He was no longer content to just sing love songs. He wanted his music to say something, to reflect the struggle and the hope of the movement. He was searching for an anthem. The inspiration for that anthem would come from a place of unimaginable personal tragedy. In June 1963, just a few months before the Shreveport incident, Sam's life was shattered. His 18-month-old son, Vincent, drowned in the family's swimming pool in a tragic accident. The loss was devastating. Friends described a man consumed by a grief so profound, it seemed to permanently alter him. The easy smile became harder to find. A new gravity, a deep and somber introspection, entered his music and his demeanor. Out of this crucible of personal grief and political anger, Sam Cooke wrote the song that would become his masterpiece and his epitaph. He was profoundly moved after hearing Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind, and he felt a sense of professional shame that such a powerful song about the struggle for civil rights had been written by a young white man, not by him. He was determined to write his own response, a song that captured the weariness, the pain, and the unshakable hope of the black experience in America. The result was, "A change is gonna come." The song was unlike anything he had ever recorded. It was a majestic symphonic work with soaring strings and lyrics that were both a personal lament and a universal declaration of faith. It spoke of being born by the river in a little tent, of a life of hardship, of facing rejection and violence. But it culminated in a chorus of transcendent hope. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is going to come. Sam himself was awed and slightly frightened by the song. He felt it was bigger than him, that it came from a place beyond his own experience. He performed it only once on television, and he rarely sang it live. It felt too raw, too personal, too monumental. He had created his anthem. It would be released posthumously, becoming the hymn of the civil rights movement and solidifying his legacy as not just a pop star, but a prophet. He had no way of knowing how soon and how tragically that legacy would be sealed. The night of December 10th, 1964, began like many others for Sam Cooke. He was at the top of his game. "A Change Is Gonna Come" was recorded. He was a regular on national television, and his business empire was thriving. He had dinner with his producer and friend Al Schmidt at Martoni's, a popular Italian restaurant and music industry hangout in Hollywood. He was in good spirits, carrying a large amount of cash, reportedly over $5,000, from recent concert receipts. After dinner, he went to a local bar where he met a 22-year-old woman named Elisa Boyer. Boyer was a troubled figure with a minor police record, but she was attractive and charismatic. Sam was a known womanizer, a side of his personality that stood in stark contrast to both his gospel roots and his image as a devoted family man. He and Boyer left the bar together, and instead of going to one of the upscale hotels where he usually stayed, he drove to a cheap, seedy, $3 a night motel in South Central Los Angeles called the Hacienda Motel. And it is here, in the dimly lit, run-down office of the Hacienda Motel, that the story fractures into a series of conflicting, confusing, and deeply contested narratives. From this point forward, there is only one official version of events and a dozen dark, unsettling questions that have haunted his legacy for over half a century. Let's first examine the official story, the one presented by the Los Angeles Police Department and accepted by the court. This version is built entirely on the testimony of two people, Elisa Boyer and the motel's manager, a 55-year-old woman named Bertha Franklin. According to Elisa Boyer, she and Sam checked into a room at the motel. She claimed that once inside, Sam became aggressive and forceful, and she feared he was going to rape her. While he was in the bathroom, she said she grabbed her clothes and, in her haste, accidentally picked up some of his as well. She fled the room, ran from the motel, and went to a nearby phone booth to call the police. This is where Bertha Franklin's testimony begins. A few minutes after Boyer fled, Franklin heard a loud banging on her office door. It was Sam Cooke. He was enraged, demanding to know where the girl had gone. Franklin stated that he was wearing nothing but a sports jacket and one shoe. She told him she didn't know anything, but he forced his way into her office and, according to her, grabbed her and demanded answers. Fearing for her life, she said she first tried to fight him off, then grabbed a .22 caliber pistol she kept for protection. She shot him once in the chest. The shot was fatal, piercing his heart. The police arrived to find Sam Cooke dead on the floor of the office. Based on this testimony, the coroner's inquest was swift. The official ruling was that Bertha Franklin had acted in self-defense. The case was deemed a justifiable homicide. The official narrative was set in stone. Sam Cooke, the beloved singer, had died in a drunken, violent rage over a prostitute. Just another sad, sordid end for a celebrity who had lost his way. The case was closed. But for those who knew Sam Cooke, the official story never made any sense. It was a narrative riddled with inconsistencies, unanswered questions, and details that felt profoundly out of character. And almost immediately, an alternative narrative born of doubt and suspicion began to take shape. The first and most vocal doubter was the legendary singer Etta James. She attended Sam's funeral and saw his body in the open casket. In her autobiography, Rage to Survive, she wrote about the deep skepticism shared by everyone in the music community. She described the visible, brutal injuries on his body, which seemed far more severe than those from a simple scuffle with the motel manager. His head was nearly detached from his shoulders, his hands were broken and crushed, and his nose was mangled. To her, it looked like he had been the victim of a savage beating, not a single gunshot. Her doubts ignited a firestorm of questions that the official investigation had conveniently ignored. Why would Sam Cooke, a wealthy superstar, take a woman to a $3 motel when he could have gone anywhere? Why was he, a man known for his impeccable style, wearing only a sports coat and one shoe? Elisa Boyer claimed she fled in fear, yet she made no attempt to contact the police until after she had already left the motel grounds. And what happened to the thousands of dollars he was known to be carrying? The police reported finding only a money clip with a little over $100. The investigation itself was shockingly cursory. The LAPD in 1964 had a notorious reputation for its dismissive and often brutal treatment of cases involving black citizens, especially those that occurred in what they considered the ghetto. The idea that they would conduct a thorough investigation into the death of a black man, even a famous one, in a sex scandal at a seedy motel, was to many laughable. The case was wrapped up in record time, its conclusion clean, simple, and, for many, utterly unbelievable. These gaping holes in the official story gave rise to a host of alternative theories, each attempting to explain the bizarre and violent end to Sam Cooke's life. These theories are not just the stuff of fringe conspiracy, they are rooted in the very real conflicts and dangers of Sam's life. The most persistent theory is that Sam Cooke was murdered, and the scene at the Hacienda Motel was a carefully orchestrated setup to cover the real crime. The motives proposed are varied. One theory points to a mob hit. Sam's independent record label was a threat to the established, often mob-connected music industry. He was making his own money and controlling his own artists, refusing to play by their rules. Had he finally crossed a line that got him killed, with the sordid motel scene designed to destroy his reputation and obscure the real reason for his death? Another, more sinister theory suggests a racially and politically motivated assassination. Sam Cooke was becoming more than just a singer. He was a powerful, wealthy, and politically conscious black man who was a vocal friend of Malcolm X and a supporter of the civil rights movement. He was a symbol of black success and independence. To the white power structure of the time, and perhaps even to elements within the government like J. Edgar Hoover's FBI, which was known to be monitoring black leaders, Sam Cooke was a dangerous figure. Was his death a message, a brutal reminder to any other black entertainer who dared to step out of the entertainment box and into the arena of political and economic power? A third category of theories is more personal, suggesting a setup orchestrated by someone closer to him. Some have pointed to his own management, speculating about financial disputes over his lucrative empire. Others have whispered about a jealous husband or a romantic entanglement gone wrong. In these scenarios, Elisa Boyer was not a random pickup, but bait in a trap, and Bertha Franklin was either a pawn or a co-conspirator. The truth is, we will likely never know. Elisa Boyer's life after the incident was one of obscurity and further minor run-ins with the law before she disappeared from the public record. Bertha Franklin was cleared of all charges and also faded from view. The only two witnesses to the beginning and the end of that fateful night took their secrets with them. The death of Sam Cooke was more than just the loss of a great talent. It was a cultural earthquake. It sent a shock wave of grief and confusion through the black community. His funeral in Chicago was a massive event, with thousands of fans lining the streets to say goodbye. The man they saw in the casket was not the crazed figure from the police report. He was their fallen king, their prophet, and his brutal, undignified death felt like a profound injustice. The controversy surrounding his death has, in many ways, defined his legacy. It transformed him from a beloved pop star into a figure of myth and mystery. He became a martyr, his death seen by many as the ultimate price he paid for his ambition, his independence, and his refusal to compromise. This narrative of martyrdom was cemented by the posthumous release of A Change Is Gonna Come. When the song hit the airwaves in the weeks after his death, it was no longer just a song. It was a prophecy. It became an anthem for the civil rights movement, Played at rallies and marches, its message of hope and perseverance made all the more poignant and powerful by the tragic loss of the man who sang it. Sam Cooke's historical significance is immense and multifaceted. As an artist, he is one of the founding fathers of what we now call soul music. He created the blueprint, demonstrating how the emotional depth of gospel could be fused with the melodic accessibility of pop to create a sound that was entirely new and deeply resonant. His influence is incalculable. You can hear his DNA in the voices of Otis Redding, Al Green, Marvin Gaye, and countless artists who followed. His songwriting set a new standard for pop craftsmanship, combining simple language with profound emotional insight. As a businessman, he was a trailblazer. His creation of SAR Records was a revolutionary act of self-determination that paved the way for future artist-run labels like Motown. He championed the idea of artists owning their own work, a fight that continues to this day. He was a visionary who understood that true power came not just from creative expression but from economic control. But perhaps his most enduring significance lies in the unresolved nature of his story. His life and death encapsulate the central contradiction of the American dream, particularly for Black Americans. He achieved a level of success that was supposed to transcend race, only to be reminded, in the most brutal way imaginable, that it could not. His story is a cautionary tale about the perils of challenging the status quo, and his unsolved death remains a potent symbol of a justice system that has historically failed its Black citizens. In the end, we are left with a legacy of beautiful, unsettling contradictions. Sam Cooke was the saintly voice of gospel who became a secular sex symbol. He was the charming pop star who was also a shrewd and revolutionary businessman. He was a unifying figure whose music brought people of all races together. Yet he died in a fog of violence and racial tension. Perhaps it's impossible to ever fully know the truth of what happened in the final hour of his life. The facts are too murky, the witnesses too compromised, the passage of time too great. The questions surrounding his death may forever remain unanswered, but in a way the most profound answer was left behind in the grooves of his records. While his death remains a symbol of a promise broken, his music remains an eternal testament to a promise of hope. The man is gone, lost to a dark and tragic mystery. But the voice, that perfect, pure, and otherworldly voice, endures. It testifies still, a sound of pure grace floating above the chaos, forever whispering that even after the longest and darkest of nights, a change is going to come.